Hey y'all, welcome to What Could Go Wrong Live. I am here with Dr. Phil. Can I call you Dr. Phil? Because I feel like that's really fun.
Yeah, no, just go for it. As soon as I finished and got my degree, my kids immediately started calling me Dr. Phil, and they thought it was hysterical, and everybody has since then. So yeah, go for it.
I mean, I didn't put two and two together until I was typing it in today, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm interviewing Dr. Phil.
There it is. We've got a similar hairstyle. I think he's much more warm and cuddly than I am, though. So
But he doesn't have the accent, which is always more exciting.
Well, you have an accent from where I come from.
Do I?
And you say y'all. You say y'all.
I do say y'all. I do.
Yeah, no, we don't do that in Australia.
How do you address a group of people?
Well, look, it depends where you're brought up. But if you're feeling really casual and relaxed, you'd say, "Hey, yous guys." Yeah, which is that's a little informal. But you'd probably just say, "Good morning, everybody."
Well, that's so boring.
No, but it's polite. I was brought up by my mum and dad to be polite, so
I mean, y'all is totally polite.
I'm sure it is.
Wow. Okay, today we're talking. Hold please. Okay, today we're talking about leading a life of purpose, which is really cool, and I get to hang out with Dr. Phil, who's on this side of me, who I met through the Relearn conference. When was that? Several months ago.
Years ago, centuries ago, in fact, somewhere back in the 1800s.
Yeah, I
think technically it was probably November last year, but feels like these days that time goes really fast these days, doesn't it?
What is time really?
I'm a history teacher. What would I know about time?
Well, I met you there. I got to present at the conference, and then was it Kyle who messaged me and was like, "Hey, do you want to come on and chat with Dr. Phil and Adriano?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're asking me, but sure, yeah, totally, why not?" Then I got to come on and we did like the recap for the day.
That's right. Well, it was supposed to be the recap of the day. So, but after 1 or 2 days of doing the recap of the day, and most of the day, of course, occurred in the night, our time. So we weren't going to stay up in the middle of the night. We weren't going to stay up in the middle of the night. Hello, Darlene. Thank you for saying hello. We weren't going to stay up in the middle of the night. So we'd get to the first thing in the morning and recording and go, I think we're just going to have a chat. So we did. It was great. And we got to learn all about you and your fantastic views about education and schools and change and helping people and all that sort of stuff. We learned much more from you than you could possibly have learned from us. So that was great.
And we had fun, so that was exciting.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's all about. And then you host Game Changers with Adriano, which is an awesome podcast. And I saw that y'all were at like some ridiculous amount of downloads now, like 90,000 or something crazy.
Yeah. So the Game Changers podcast available on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, Google Play. Like, subscribe. If you like what you see, tell your friends. The Game Changers podcast. There it is.
That was really good.
We're tickle pink, really. We're up nearly up to 100,000 episode downloads.
That's so cool.
Look, it's very cool. It's not about the art teacher and me. It's really about the appetite that's out there for educators to want to engage with role models for how you bring about change in the times that we're in, and how you develop the courage to take that sort of, we talk about it, sort of the big step forward and up. So most of us don't create from first principles, unlike you, Chelsea, because you're an innovator and you conceive of all sorts of things. Most people don't do that. Most people need a model to look at and say, okay, I can try that, and then I can iterate from there. So we thought it would be really cool to talk to all sorts of people over the world, and we talk to students, and we talk to young teachers, and we talk to very old teachers like me, and we talk to professors and we talk to people involved in around education, in support of education. What we don't do is talk to talking heads. So we deliberately don't go and find the person who's written the latest book who's on the speaking circuit, because you can hear those people anytime. What we're really interested in doing is talking to people like you who are at the chalk face making a difference in the world. Chelsea Robertson, that's you.
I mean, and I've yet to get my invite, so I don't know what that's about. I've got to find Adriano, hunt somebody down.
Well, you do. He's the talent scout. I'd just sit back and think about questions to ask people.
You're the thinker. You're the brains behind it. Is that what you're saying? Are you the brains behind the show?
No, I don't think so.
I'm going to clip that part and post it.
There it is. I'm just the bald guy. I'm just the bald guy with a beard. That's all I am.
Well, when I was going through your LinkedIn profile again today to try and say like what you do, you do like 17 things. So I can't keep up with all that. So would you tell us the 17 things that you do, Dr. Phil?
Sure thing. So, Chel, I'm happy to give you a little bit of a potted history around it because it's probably helpful. I started life teaching as a 19-year-old, and I went back to my old school to teach a little bit of history. And the oldest boy in my class was 18, and I was going out with his sister. So that was a bit interesting. But in those days, in the part of Australia that I came from, you could learn to teach as an apprenticeship. So by the time I'd qualified at my undergraduate level, and my undergraduate degrees are in history and in law, I'd been teaching for 6 or 7 years at that point in time, and I'd had all sorts of experience. I went off and became a head of department and a director of studies and teaching and learning and a deputy, and ended up running a school. And at the age of 39, wasn't enjoying that and going, what do I do now? So I went off to help a mate of mine who had a need to think about what he needed to do with his school. And so we sort of split up his role, and I got some things to do, and that sort of went on. And we sort of realized, one day I said to him, I don't think this is working that well and he said, I think you should be a consultant. So I rang up a mate of mine and said, an old boss, and said, Ian thinks I should be a consultant. And he went, oh, that's funny. I'm selling my consulting business right now. And I went, oh, what's that? And we agreed on a price. And then I said, okay, done. Now what's a consultant? We set up.
I like that. Jump and then figure it out. That's how I
roll.
So.
Absolutely. I talk with people all the time about planning. But fundamentally, I'm driven by a sense of purpose around what it is that I do. And if I believe that something is in accord with that sense of purpose, I will dive in and try and make it work as best as possible, and to a certain extent run from intent and then work out the details later, if necessary.
Yeah.
I think you can.
I knew I liked you.
Well, I think you can come up with a grand plan, and there might be some stages in that plan. But if we seriously think that we can, if we seriously think that we can imagine what things will be like 2 or 3 or even 4 years from now, we're crazy. So you develop the intent, you sort of work out where you think the pathway might go, and then you plan the next stage, and then the next one, and then the next one. Anyway, so a decade later, and we have built a research institute called Circle, the Centre for Innovation, Research, Creativity and Leadership in Education. We've run the world's largest and longest running character education program, because we believe in that very quaint notion that the reason why we do school is the character of a person. That really? Fundamentally,
you've humanized the concept of education? What?
Well, I'm not sure I would qualify as human, but certainly the people, the wonderful people who work for and with me have been brilliant in helping us to think about what a human-centered, people, planet and place conscious, technologically enriched and intentionally purposeful education might be. And of course, that puts students at the centre of everything that we do. We've talked with families, and we talked with kids, and we talked with teachers all around the world about what they want for their kids, and they tell us they want their kids to be good people, they want them to be future builders, they want them to be continuous learners and unlearners, to be solution architects, responsible citizens, and team creators. They're the broad sort of categories when we talk to people and we fit it all together, and those have become the graduate outcomes that now, if you like, the front end of what we do, which is a school for tomorrow, is built on. So Chelsea, when we went into this, I was determined that we weren't going to operate on the sort of I reckon school. Right. We should do this. Why should we do this? Because I reckon it's a good idea. That to me seems a dodgy reason. Well, it seems like to me a dodgy reason to influence the lives of others. You can be driven by a sense of purpose, but you need evidence behind what you do. So we spent 10 years building up the evidence base. I've got a couple of professorships here in Australia that allegedly recognise something or allow me to validate something or run projects or do that sort of thing. We teach a master's program. We work with individual schools. We've got these massive research projects that go on all over the world. And then last year, Adriano and I sat down and said, hey, what if we do a podcast? And ta-da, the game changes. You wouldn't want to do one thing, would you? Because that'd be boring. Why not do many things?
I bore way too easily for that. Like I need no less than 17 things at one time.
There it is. So look, Chelsea, the major places where we do work, if you like, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, United States, Canada, United Kingdom, Europe. They're the sort of major places that we connect with. But Game Changers has gone even further. I mean, Adriano would know the figures about the reach because he's inclined to remember these sorts of things. But, typically where, more than 25 countries are, really people are there listening to us and more importantly, listening to the Game Changers, the people we talk with, because the Game Changers aren't Adriano and me. So, no, I'm just a bloke with a beard and he's an art teacher who talks about design thinking a lot.
I got to talk to him a while back and that was a cool conversation.
I know. Yeah, he's good to talk to, isn't he?
Here. Yeah, he's fun. I mean, both of y'all have the fun accent, so it's like I don't even. What are you talking about? I don't even know. It's fun to listen to.
And can I congratulate you on what you're doing here? This is fabulous. It's a terrific thing.
Thank you. I'm just winging it. Today is my first day with an overlay on my thing here. So like this fancy logo with all the things, that's brand new.
Oh, wow.
So
wow. I don't know how to do that on this thing. Adriano would have turned up and he would have had, a schoolfortomorrow.com logo behind it, and he would have had this and that and the other. And I'm just a history teacher. I can't do those things.
Well, I love so I'm actually got to be a part of because I hung out with you guys at Relearn. I got like a free year of hanging out in a School for Tomorrow. The platform or whatever. So I love getting to watch that, and I adore all the work that you guys do because it's very mission central for me, right? How are we? I think it was Adriano who said, and I've actually quoted it several times, but I can't remember if it was him or not. But something about the future of education is that we don't know the future of education, and that's the biggest part of it.
Like
and
him.
So.
Sounds like him, and right? we're gonna claim it as him because that's a sort of insightful thing that he would say.
We're just gonna throw it in there. But I've said that several times because a lot of people coming back to me and saying, "You talk about this future of education. What is that? What are you building?" And I'm like, I'm not building anything. I'm following the people who are building the things. Right? We're co-constructing this together. It's not like I've gone ahead, I've seen the future, and now I'm bringing it back to you. It's hey, let's come alongside and figure this out together. And I have a friend who's an author writing a book called Bringing Consciousness to Education, Kamal Shah, and she is kind of the same thing, right? I asked her when she was on with me, hey, what are you writing this book about? Are you telling us what the future of education is? And she was like, heck no. I'm asking questions from all the people that we're interviewing, and we're discussing like all the possible ways for us to partner with learners to get to the future of education. And I feel like that's very similar to what you guys do in your work. Is we're not saying here's what the future looks like. We're saying how can we come alongside and figure out what that looks like with the learners. Absolutely.
I mean, you have to be. We talk about development as being something from the inside out. So this notion that we are creating something which is imposed from above on people, it just doesn't work that way. Like we might herd and group people in a particular way, and we might push them into a building and say, today you're at school. But fundamentally, the learning is occurring inside the person to start with.
Right.
And yes, they're interacting with people, and they're interacting with their sense of place. And they may well, and hopefully they do, develop a sense of shared purpose and shared practice with people around them. But that development is occurring from the inside out. If we fail to recognise that, then we're condemned to doing the same mediocre schooling forever. And why would you want to do something mediocre when you could do something excellent?
I mean, that's my question. I had someone on here a while back, Matt Barnes, who said, if education looks like it did when you were sitting in the classroom, then you're doing it wrong. That was an interesting concept. I think there's so many facets to that, but I'd love to hear your response to that kind of statement.
Oh, look, so the first thing that I would say is that if we look at most of the people who've responded to the various different research surveys and discovery surveys that we've done with people around the world, and that's well over 500,000 respondents.
Wow.
I'm taking a guess at that. I'm probably lowballing, if I'm honest. It's probably almost getting up towards 1 million if we were really to count all the different surveys and all the different pieces of work that we've done. We would describe most people who respond across the world as conservative pragmatists. In other words, they're driven by what works and they're cautious about change. They're willing to go on a journey if you can give them a really good reason for doing that. But you've then got to
I'm the opposite.
Connect.
I'm like, you want to jump off the bridge? I'm totally down. Let's do it.
Absolutely. And look, I've got a risk appetite a bit like that too. You know, it's you know, it's not far from where I am in Sydney now. There's a park called Nielsen Park. It's a beach on Sydney Harbour, so it is of course just beautiful. And you know, there is of course a jumping rock there. And you know, I was the first kid off the rock. Because I was an idiot, you know, and my brother dared me, of course, because he would. But so I've got that risk appetite. You do. Most people don't. So the world, if the world is going to change, the world is going to grow, the world is going to evolve, and we do need the world to evolve. I mean, if we believe in the concept of entropy, if we leave things as they are, things will fall apart. You know, it's Miley Cyrus. Things fall apart, nothing breaks like a heart. So, you know, if we believe in that, and why not believe in Miley? Because you know, Miley's got lots of important things to say. But if we believe in that notion, that if we leave things as the status quo, because we're frightened of moving forward, or because we're comfortable, or we prefer it, we need to acknowledge that the status quo becomes stasis and then starts to disintegrate. So we need to evolve. We need to improve. If we're going to be happy in our lives, there's at least two things we need to do. We need to grow, and we need to understand that it's inherently more satisfying to look after other people and their needs than it is to look after our own needs. Human beings are meant to be selfless, and they're meant to work together. That we are social creatures. That's how and why we're created. Whatever your beliefs on creation are, how and why we're created is we are created to live in community with each other, and we are all broken. You know, we're all imperfect. We're all flawed. But as Leonard Cohen would say, you know, the cracks. That's the cracks of the brokenness. That's how you let the light in. And your flaws give me an opportunity to help you, and my flaws give you an opportunity to help me, and that way it compels us together. So we are meant to work in community, and we are meant to grow. The job of people like us with a risk appetite is to try and convince people who are conservative pragmatists to give them the reason why, and to connect what our reason why is to their sense of purpose. And if we fail to do that, we fail to convince them. So simply turning around and going, wow, this is new, this is exciting, that might give us our jollies, but the reality is that most people will look at that and go, really? Really? And you know that, don't you? You walk into a school and you see the look on the teachers' faces and you're going, the future, change, innovation. And they're going, really? Really?
Yeah,
another
they're like,
one?
this is what we've always done, which makes me just want to crawl under the table.
Exactly. Or they say, oh yeah, we tried that once back in 1873 and it didn't work then. So why do we want to do this now? Or they sit there and they go, yes. You would say that. What would you know? You're not really a teacher anymore, are you? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's accurate.
And
it's
then,
like you've heard these things before.
Oh, just once or twice. Like you, like everyone does, because these are normal, natural human responses. From normal, natural human beings who are cautious about change into the future. They need a model. They need to iterate from that model. On occasion, they will take a big step forward and up. And trying to get them to do that all together is really, really difficult. And they will see everything new as something laid on top that is extra, unless we help them to take it to the core of their being, where that inside-out development is occurring, and that's purpose. And that's why that's why I talk about a life of purpose. That's why everything that we do, I'm convinced that if we want people to live a high-performance life and that do things really, really well, we need to help them to identify what their purpose is and connect their practice to their purpose and intersect with their people in their place. 4 Ps. There it is.
Yeah. Hey, wow. Hey, you have like so many cool little slogans happening right now. It's very exciting.
That's very
But
cool.
I can totally relate to that, because my previous role was they were essentially bringing me into a school that had been 30 years old and needed drastically to be brought into the future. And there was just a lot of dissension between the people who were there and where they were wanting to go, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember, like, I like to say my job offer went a little bit like this. There are, I don't know, roughly 200, 240 students, roughly 75 staff members, and all the families that go along with that. They're all angry, and they're all probably not going to like you. Do you want the job? And I was like, heck yeah. Burn it down. Like, we are going to do this. And it ended up being a beautiful thing, as long as I had a space in my office where I could cry quietly, in between meetings. I just needed that little space there. But we ended up doing beautiful things. And it was because of that. Like, we had to find out how we could all go in one direction at one time. And we called it building a round team. So instead of a hierarchical model where I'm saying this is what we're doing top down, we all came alongside the student in the center and functioned in a circle and kind of moved it forward, which is very similar, I feel like, to what you're saying about finding the purpose and then connecting those pieces together.
Oh, I love that. I think that's a lovely model of a round community. I love the idea of the network that exists within that round. And the idea that each hub, each node, each connection within that community plays its role, and that shared sense of purpose and that shared sense of practice and the traditions and the culture that you build up to reinforce that over time. That's like the current of electricity that runs through it all and makes it all happen.
Yeah.
It's
and it all centers around the student, which makes everything come back to, why are we doing this? And is what we're doing affecting the student in a positive way? And that's the biggest part, is we're no longer centered on the person at the top, because I don't really matter. We need to be centered on the person that we're serving, which is the student in the middle. And that's why I believe, like what you were saying, this circle model, right, is we're all collaborated around the student instead of focused towards the person at the top who doesn't really matter. We're serving the student, not the principal or the director or whatever else.
And funnily enough, that's why we call the Research Institute Circle. Apart from it being a cute anagram that I thought up in a meeting on a Thursday afternoon when I was bored, it's. I think for us that's really important to remember that the reason why we do what we do is to help students improve their outcomes. So we are there so that there'll be better outcomes for more learners. I think, the first time I came across this, there's a very great Australian researcher called Dr. Jeff Masters, who is a wonderful servant of education in our part of the world. And he runs the Australian Council for Educational Research, or ASA, as we would call it here. And he is, in 1993, I think I heard him talk for the first time, and he said, it's all about student outcomes. That's why we exist. We are there. The evidence that we need that we are having the impact that we are. You hear people say, I want to make a difference. Lots of teachers will tell you that. I went into this to make a difference. What's the tangible evidence that we make a difference? Improved outcomes for more learners, improving student outcomes. Sometimes I will hear schools say, we've got this lovely community and it's really, really special. And probably two things I would say to that is, number one, your community is not nearly as special as you think it is. In fact, it's probably quite similar to lots and lots and lots of school communities around the world, with the exception of, the insignia and the logos and things like that, which create a little bit of illusion of difference. But the community is fundamentally the same, because people are fundamentally the same where you go around the world. And secondly, if you're there for the sake of the community, you're forgetting the fact it's a school, and what we are here to do is to improve outcomes for learners as they learn, as they live, as they lead, and as they work. And those four, learn, live, lead, work, that's how we think of 21st century capabilities and competencies and, you know, the 6 C's and the 4 P's and this, that, and the other. If you boil it all down, what we want kids to be able to do is to learn, to live, to lead, and to work with purpose, with success. And we would argue that we want them to go on what we call a pathway to excellence, or the pathway to excellence. And so learning is about self-awareness, and it's about answering the question, who am I? Mm-hmm. Living is about relationship, and that's about answering the question, where do I fit in? Leading is about asking the question and answering it, hopefully. How do I best serve others? So therefore that's about service. And then working is about whose am I? And that's about that sense of vocation or calling. In other words, who will be the recipient? Who will be the beneficiaries of the work that you do? Because it forces you beyond yourself to think about the way in which you contribute around there. And I know that some people will have a more individualistic focus around these sorts of things, and and some will be more communitarian about their focus. But we have to have a narrative that connects the individual to the community, and those 4 questions and that process and the 4 competencies that emerge from it. If there are 4 messages that we would say boil down to form the real curriculum. Learn, answer the question, who am I, by saying, know yourself. Live, answer the question, where do I fit in, by saying, earn your place. Mm-hmm. Lead, answer the question, how do I best serve others, by saying, go on a journey from me to you to us. And then work, which is about answering the question, whose am I, which is saying, find your calling. So there it is. There's 12 years of research boiled down to 4 questions and 3 or 4 bits in there.
I love that, because it's a holistic viewpoint, which many times that's lost when we're looking at a learner or a student. Is we're looking at one indicator or one assessment or one value, and we're losing the holistic perspective. So, I mean, then my question is, how would you assess these types of things? If you have to look for outcomes, and theoretically these things would have to be assessed, and what does that even look like?
So assessing character and assessing competency, fundamentally, I kind of want to break it down in a slightly different way around that. It is my absolute area of research passion at the moment. Kind of in the early stages of writing this up, and probably hoping to put something together by the end of this year on it. I describe that 4-step journey. What I want to do at the same time also is to say that within that 4 steps of journey, the character that you're growing has 3 dimensions to it. And the first dimension is your civic character, which is about how you develop a sense of belonging. Then there's your performance character. So if you belong, if you feel as though you belong, you're more likely to achieve your potential, and that's performance character. If you feel as though you belong through your civic character, and that you're achieving your potential through your performance character, then you're more likely to do good and right in the world, and that's your moral character. And we assess all 3 of these things differently. For our civic character, it's kind of like a checklist, because to feel as though you belong, your community has to tell you whether or not you fit in. So your community will tell you, well, if there's this criterion and this one and this one and this one and this one, do you pass muster on those sorts of things? Mm-hmm. So it's civic character is criterion referenced. Performance character, on the other hand, that's about a continuum of development, very, very different. So I start here, and then I'm hoping to grow to here and developing adaptive expertise and self-efficacy around whatever it is that I'm choosing to do. And the way in which we determine the agency, if you like, is a co-agency between the learner as a novice and the teacher as an expert. And over time, as the student gets more expertise and greater self-efficacy and greater confidence in what they're doing, there's a shift in the power balance, because inevitably the expert starts with more of the power, because you've got more of the knowledge, more of the expertise, more of the skills, more of the and you know, we are who we teach, you know, and we teach who we are. So so you know, we're modeling this, we're scaffolding this, we're coaching this. But as our novices get more expert, we have to step back and allow them the agency at that point. So with the civic character of belonging, it's the community that tells us whether or not we belong. Like you can knock on the door, but they're not going to let you in the front door unless they want to. All right. So you got to fit in that way. It's true. Like, you know, and you know, some kids find this really, really difficult to understand, because they just desperately want to belong, but they don't understand that, you know, you've got to work out how you fit in. The agency for the performance character, as I said, that's a continuum, and it starts with the expert and it goes to the novice. When we get to moral character, there ain't no one, Chelsea, who can tell you what is right or wrong. You have to do this yourself. Okay, so the agency.
I like your
character,
use of the word "ain't."
There you go. I'll be saying y'all very quickly, because y'all are influencing me really, really strongly right now. But with the moral character thing, how we measure that, we measure this ourselves. And the role of the people around us is to hold a mirror up to us, to help us to see ourselves and to give us a framework and so on. But at the end of the day, it's, you know, if you're faith-based like me, it's between you and your God as to whether or not you're doing the right thing or you're doing the wrong thing. And you have to decide where that is. So unlike the civic character, where the agency is entirely with the community, really, and you have to fit in, with the moral character thing, agency is solely with you. And so again, as teachers, we need to remember this, because, you know, when we turn around and we say to a little child who's been naughty, say, "You're a naughty child, you're a bad child," we have no right to make that statement. That's up to them to make that particular statement. And kids will tell us that, won't they? The kids will tell us that they hate being judged, because what we've done is we've taken the methodology for civic character, where we can turn around and we can say, "Yep, you did well. Congratulations. You're part of the club. You're in the team." We can't apply that same thing to moral character. In the strongest assessors of moral character I've seen ask great questions.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You know, did you really mean to do that? And what was the impact of that? And how do you think that made someone feel? And you know, I can see my grade 1 teacher right now.
Right, like this is a huge. I love, like, this is a huge soapbox for me, is trying to take, like you had said, the civic parameters and applying them to the moral parameters. And we as educators, as parents, as adults, we are choosing the right and the wrong for another person. And while we are keeping them safe and all those things, it is about asking those quality questions. And I used to train this in early education, but I hate seeing it kind of drop off as a student gets older. Because then they stop asking them questions so often. And then from my experience, they start telling them more often. But I always say, I wish we could pull more of our early education processes and throw them into primary, secondary education, because that was how we functioned, was, hey, can you tell me about what happened? How did you feel when that happened? How do you feel like that made the other person feel when that happened? Because we're trying to teach them how to process emotions, right? But just because they leave early education at 8 years old and are suddenly, you know, a full-grown kid, doesn't mean they have those things. And so I love when we have the mindset as educators to walk in with that, is that we are not here to tell them morally what's right or what's wrong, but we are here to help them process what their experience is and find that, have the autonomy to feel that and find that for themselves. And so I'm like, that's a whole big soapbox that I just adore that you brought up.
So 2 things there that I really like about what you said there, Chelsea. You can tell I've been podcasting. There are 2 things that I really like about what you said. What you all just said there. The first thing I think that I really like is that understanding that this applies throughout life. That, you know, if we're going to lead children, if we're going to coach children, if we're going to be teachers, we need to understand that the age and the stage does not matter in terms of the methodology that we need to be using around assessment around these things. The second thing that I like is that clear understanding of the power of questions in there. I would add one qualification to what you're saying there, and that is that I think it's really important that kids see us present a tangible model of what is right and what is wrong. But we need to be careful around that, because we need to be prepared to say, this is what I think is right.
Yeah.
And I think back to my former role as a head of school, where I was making decisions about whether or not people would be included or excluded from the community, and it was always on the basis of essentially making a decision about the morality of behaviour and the impact that was having on the individual and on others and that sort of thing. And I think it's okay at that point to say, I will not stand for that. We will not stand for that. In our community, we don't do it that way. I think it's okay and in fact, it's not okay. It's essential for us to say things like that. It's essential for us to say things like, I think that's wrong, and this is why I think that's wrong. And I have this role, and et cetera, et cetera. But you can't turn around to someone and say, you're good or you're bad. That's
right. Yeah.
Somebody else gets to do that, and that person's, up there somewhere.
I agree. And
I'm told, that's not our, the Apostle Paul tells us, judge not lest you be judged yourself, and then he spends the rest of that whole epistle actually judging people. So there's an irony there. But we need to remember that making a judgment and using that as a piece of diagnostic feedback for a child about how they are developing in their sense of belonging, the achievement of their potential, and the doing of good and right. It's a diagnostic tool, and it's fundamentally, if we think about our Kohlberg's moral reasoning scale kind of thing, what we're trying to do is I need to get this right. We're trying to push them from there to there. I had to do that in reverse, and I had to do it upside down too, because I'm in Australia. So that was quite technical for me, because I'm not good at 3D space.
I'm impressed.
But we need to move kids from the point where they're doing it because we tell them to do it to one where they're doing it for themselves. So we need to move them from the extrinsic to the intrinsic. But then once they're at that intrinsic, we then need to move them on, because they understand that they do it for me and for you and for us all at the same time.
Right.
And that won't happen if we get those assessment tools wrong, because we're just, we got issues with men in the world at the moment, don't we, Chelsea? We got issues with men. We got issues with men all over the world. We're living in a time where the indiscretions of some men are dominating our perception about how the world is working at the moment. And so we've got challenges with the education of boys, because we need to educate boys around a whole lot of things to do with their masculinity and how to express it properly. In my part of the world, and in the United Kingdom at the moment in particular, we're talking about consent a lot, because what we're discovering, of course, is that with the technology that we've got thousands and thousands and thousands of young women and older women who are bearing witness to experiences of terrible sexual violence that were visited upon them by young men and older men. And that's just terrible. Yeah. Here's the challenge. If we turn around to young men and we say, don't do that, you're bad, you're a man, you're a rapist, you're toxic, et cetera, what are those boys going to do? They're just going to switch off, and they're going to say, in fine Australian parlance, bugger you, I'm out of here and I'll do what I want. So we need to learn more effectively how to take that, which is, that type of situation, which is fundamental to the education of a boy, is to learn how to be a good man and ask the right questions to help them there. Hello, Adriano. Lovely to see you, mate.
We were just talking about you.
We were just talking about you, and I wish you were here right now to help me through this topic this can of worms that I've just opened up. But no, I mean, I'm serious about this. You know, I think that you know, it would be easy for me to talk about to have spent a life in a classroom talking about the esoteric joys of the origins of the Peloponnesian War, and whether it was the Athenians, the Spartans, the Megarians, or the Corinthians, whether it was an economic analysis or a this or a that or the other. I taught that 19 years in a row. I really could have just spent a lifetime doing that. But at some point, you have to open up your eyes and say, what is our purpose? If we are here to produce good people in all of the sense, then we have to be able to connect what we are doing in a classroom today to the way in which that works. So if you're going to do the Peloponnesian War, if you're going to do warfare between the Greeks and the Athenians and the Spartans and all of the rest of the Greeks and the Persians, at some point you have to say, is it right that people should treat each other in this way? Is it right that when someone goes in and conquers a town, because they used to write about this stuff quite blithely, you know, you know, there's little throwaway lines and sit there and go, they burned the town to the ground, they raped the women and killed the men and enslaved the population. That's it in a sentence. And then the historian will move on, and you've got to pause and say, hang about, it's not just about swords and shields. There's some serious stuff going on here. You know, if we're going to do Macbeth, you know, if we're going to jump to Shakespeare, because you know, conservatives always jump to Shakespeare, don't they? Because you couldn't possibly study the English language unless you'd done Shakespeare. Right? I love Shakespeare, but I'm weird. Most people don't. All right, it's hard work to do that. And I don't mind the idea. Well, I don't mind the idea of the hard work to get there along the way. But, you know, if you're going to study Macbeth, are you going to look at it in terms of characterization and rhyme and meter and plot and this and that and the other? Or are you going to get to the heart of it? And you're going to say, is it right that a person should become the king in that way? Should a king do this? Should a queen do this? Should husbands and wives interact in that way with each other? Is this what we are meant to do when we have power?
Yeah.
And, you know, if you look at what's going on in North America at the moment, what do you do when you've got power? So many questions, all right? So many questions. We have similar questions, not exactly the same questions in Australia, because, you know, in Australia, the great gaping wound of Australian history is our appalling treatment of our First Nations people. Since 1788, in fact, since earlier than that, but since settlement began, this was not settlement, it's invasion. We colonised the place, and we came in and we took people's land from them, and then we went about systematically murdering people, dispossessing them from their land. And this is a people or a group of peoples who really, their connection to their land is profound. So we take them away from their land, we rob them of their spirituality around that, we kill lots of them, and then we don't do anything about it. Until it's such a mess, and then we go, oh, it's just a bit hard. What do we do about that? So anyway, I'm getting on serious stuff here, Chelsea.
No, I mean, if I were to wrap all of that up into a little ball, okay, this is what it would look like to me. We want to ensure that a child understands, or a learner, I guess, all of us, we understand the external needs of the community, right? But we're also able to make internal decisions about what is right and wrong based on how it impacts us and how it impacts the people around us. And so a way that we would talk about that in early education, when we're first trying to create this, or not really create, we're trying to encourage this sense of self and sense of community and the impact that they have on those around them. We would always talk about using the activity as the container for a relationship. So we never have an activity just to have an activity, right? Like you were saying, we're going to teach about this war. That would be the activity. But using it as a container for a relationship would be where we come back and say, is it right to do this? And so there's no simple activity. Everything that we're doing is to create a container for a relationship and to broaden these experiences and to ask these questions. Because That's what early education is, right? We ask questions all day. They ask us questions and we ask them questions. We just go round and round. But I think that is the piece, right? Is we are presenting the information, but always with the tone of, what do you think about that? How does that make you feel? How do you feel like that impacted the people around you? And always as a container or a larger relationship, instead of just as pure fact or pure activity for the sake of activity.
Chelsea, that's gorgeous. That's just a beautiful, yeah, it really is. It's a beautiful way of talking about the pedagogical relationship, and the way in which the way in which the learning occurs within a school for tomorrow. One of our partners, Leanne Wilson, she's a Bidger and Karakara descendant who also acknowledges her South Sea Islander heritage. She's a very distinguished First Nation citizen of our country, and she and her cousin Mal Meninga, he's a very, very great Australian on the sporting field and in the business world, and as a citizen, as a community contributor, they would talk very much about circular learning, and what you're describing there is a circle, isn't it? And that's the theme going all the way through around it. How do we push things around and around and around? If we have this idea that education is about content and we're just pushing it from there into there. No, it's going round and round and round. I knew you were a real educator, because you're early childhood. See,
that's right. That's where the real ones are.
You can do real stuff, okay? It's just whether it's pretenders like me, we just faff around with older kids and play with swords and sandals and things like that.
What do you even really do? I mean, what do you do?
Nothing.
They don't
nothing.
I
do nothing. No. Just do no. All you do is just turn up and talk stories and then tell them they've got an essay to you the next day. And why would you even tell them how to write an essay? Because that's all part of the mystery, isn't it? All part of the fun. Let them work it out for themselves.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I am so on the boat of how many early education principles can we push into primary, secondary, higher education, because it's so very applicable. I'm going to tell you, as I've been more and more in consulting this past year, I cannot tell you how many times I use principles I learned in child development and how to work with early learners in conversations with adults all day long. And how do you feel about that? Do you feel like that's the best choice moving forward?
There it is. So I think, look, if we sort of tie this sort of thing on, as I said, I love this notion of us connecting our purpose to our practice, and the most powerful professional learning exercise that we do, whether it's with our online programs through a School for Tomorrow, or our master's programs, or with face-to-face work that we do with people, or this sort of coaching and connecting type work that we do, and that the most powerful question to ask a teacher is to say, what is your purpose? Why do you do what you do? And to say, no, stop. Don't tell me how busy you are. Give yourself 20 minutes or 30 minutes by yourself and sit down and tell me what your purpose is. And now tell me what you're going to do about it. And now tell me what that looks like on the ground. And by the time you're done in 20 or 30 minutes with that, and they've got, a page of stuff written out, they turn around and go, oh, wow. No one's ever asked me that question before. And of course, people have asked them that question. But what happens is, as chalkies, it's the Daniel Kahneman thing. What you see is all there is. So we're in up to our elbows with children and stuff and this and that and the other, and we don't allow ourselves time to sit back and reflect. And if we don't reflect, we can't grow. And we're constantly in crisis mode, and we're constantly in fight or flight mode, and it's
I mean, those are the same questions that I ask when I go in to work with an organization or a school. Is I ask, what is your mission? And if they can tell me that, then my next question, if they can tell me that, and then my next question is, how are your daily practices aligning with your mission? How are your daily things getting you to your mission? And it's the same. I mean, those are the same questions.
That's it. So if I were to walk onto the netball court now, if I were to walk into the drama studio, if I were to walk into the, the Year 8 maths classroom, in our part of the world, we say maths with an S on the end, Chelsea. It's like we don't use the word y'all. would say you all, but that's all right. That's all right because you guys speak funny with an accent. You need to know, what does it look like in a maths classroom? What does it look like on a sporting field? What does it look like in a performance space? What does it look like in the yard? Internationally, if you talk to 11 to 15-year-olds about the reason why they go to school, they will tell you lunch.
Seriously.
Lunch is...
it's the same thing when you ask 4-year-olds. I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah. Look, people who know me, I'm unashamed. The most important thing in life is lunch. But, it's sort of... And the best lunch is lunch that becomes dinner. You know what I mean? So it's just, those lunches, sit down 1 o'clock.
I love those lunches. Yeah. And then you're like, I don't know what we're doing. So, okay. So we've kind of wrapped that up into a beautiful little ball there, right? I think we did a wonderful job of bringing all of that back into a nice little package.
And finished with lunch. So,
That's
what
true.
could possibly go wrong?
I think we did the very best. Okay, so where can people hang out with you? We already covered Game Changers, but where do people find you and see your work? You've written 27 books, right?
Yeah, I like writing. and every now and then somebody actually reads it, which is really fun when they do, and they go, that was good. That was good. Oh, no, I didn't like that bit, but you can sit there and go, but at least you read it. That's a good thing.
It's true.
So
it's true.
Check us out through Podcast Supplier for Game Changers podcast, and you'll recognise it because there's a bloke on there in blue and pink who looks kind of like this, and then there's another bloke with a shock of hair who looks like Adriano, and that's sort of us in the blue and the pink. But then if you were to go to aschoolfortomorrow.com, that's our community portal. So that will tell you about us, and then that will get you into, eventually, if you join us as a member, and you can either join as a personal member or a professional member. We encourage you out there, people, professional members, it's good to pay for your professional learning. I know all of us teachers, no bastard wants to pay for anything ever, but it's good for us to pay for our professional learning. And good on you, Adriano. Adriano's put the link up there, of course, for the Game Changers podcast and how you get that, particularly through Apple. He likes us to promote us through the Apple platform. But if you go onto our platform, what you will discover there is you will discover resources, you'll discover testimonials from a student leader and a staff member or a normal member once a week. You'll find courses on there. Some of the courses are free for members, and some you have to pay extra for. All of our courses are built on principles of self-determination. So everybody on there, it's about them looking inside themselves and tracking that internal development. We've got readings, we've got videos, we've got all sorts of things. And we've got students and teachers and leaders and very soon parents interacting all on the same platform. So there it is. Adriano's put the link up there again too, because he is
Adriano is on
scholar. He is. I didn't do this for him because I'm not nearly that organised. So I should have. I'm feeling a bit guilty now.
Oh, Adriano, while you're here, Dr. Phil threw you under the bus for not having me on Game Changers. So I'm just throwing that out there.
I'm not really sure that actually happened. But it's all right. We'll run with that for the moment.
Yeah, and you're on LinkedIn and Twitter and all that.
No, well, I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Twitter, but Adriano tells
Twitter.
me I have to. Adriano's on Twitter. And it's not Adriano, it's Adriano. Or as one of our clients said yesterday, it's Adriano.
I can't do that. That's too hard.
And he's a master of Twitter. One of our game changers and an amazing Australian educator who I call the warrior queen of Twitter, Zena Chalic. She's given me an uncompromising thing that I've got to join Twitter. So very soon I'm going to take this sort of life of purpose thing and we're going to go out there and start talking with people about what it means to live a life of purpose and how you can find ways to do that in a school for tomorrow. Adriano's telling me I have to stop talking because I'm... Okay, I'll stop talking.
Okay, well, we'll wrap up because Adriano, now I don't know how to say it, has told us that we're done because Game Changers is coming. So check out Game Changers. Thank you for hanging out with me and Dr. Phil today. This is through Restream, which is where I stream all of my stuff. I get to stream through all kinds of different platforms. They do it for me because I wouldn't be able to do it for myself. So thank you, Restream, for that. Check out Game Changers. Check out A School for Tomorrow. And go bug Dr. Phil to get a Twitter because he needs one. And that's it for What Could Go Wrong. So thanks for hanging out with us. We will see y'all next time.
Thanks, Chelsea.